The ground beneath the cemetery was soft, too soft for a place that had held the dead for decades. Finn Talbot pressed the heel of his boot into the earth just inside the rusted iron gate, and the soil gave way under his weight, sinking deeper than it should have. The sensation crawled up his legs, unsettling, like stepping on the belly of something that still breathed beneath the ground. The deed in his rough, calloused hand felt heavier than the paper it was printed on. He turned it over again and again, as though the answer to why might be hiding in the dense legal wording. But no matter how many times he read the name Jeremiah Talbot, it rang hollow. He had never met the man, never even heard Uncle Jeremiah mentioned at the supper table growing up. It was as though the old man had been erased from family memory, until Wallace Rigsby, the town's lawyer, arrived at Finn's cabin 3 days ago with a letter and a contract, his polished boots tapping against Finn's porch like they didn't belong to this dusty world. Now here he stood, a poor farmer, inheritor of a forgotten cemetery on the ragged edge of town. The air smelled of rust and weeds. Grass grew in uneven clumps, yellowed in patches, lush in others, as though the earth couldn't decide whether it wanted to give life or keep it buried. A crow perched on the bent cross of a grave marker, its black feathers glistening like oil in the pale morning light. Finn moved slowly between the headstones, his eyes narrowing. 7 graves. That was all. For a cemetery supposedly in use for 30 years, it looked more like a family plot than a town burial ground. The stones leaned at odd angles, their inscriptions weathered but legible enough to tell a story that made the hair at the back of his neck rise. All 7 deaths had occurred within a single month. Same year, same sequence of days. And yet, the graves were lined in a perfect row, evenly spaced, as if someone had measured the ground with care. That wasn't how grief worked. Families didn't bury loved ones with military precision. Death was chaos. Burial was mourning. But here it was order. The morning sun stretched long shadows across the uneven ground, and it was in one of those shadows that Finn saw it. Near the far fence line, beneath the twisted arms of a gnarled oak tree, the earth looked disturbed. Not freshly dug, but not old either. Somewhere in between. The grass hadn't quite grown back, and the soil was loose, clumped differently from the surrounding ground. Finn knelt, running his rough fingers through the dirt. It was loamy, streaked with clay, not the settled, compact earth that time pressed down. Someone had moved this earth, filled it in, and left it to pass for natural. But it wasn't natural, not to a farmer who'd spent his life reading the language of soil. He stood, brushing his palms on his trousers, his eyes drifting back toward the distant town. From here the buildings looked like toys scattered on the horizon, smaller, less important. The cemetery felt cut off, forgotten by design. So why him? Why had Jeremiah, a man he never knew, left him this place? The old man could have given it to the church. He could have sold it. He could have let the county take it for unpaid taxes. Instead, Jeremiah Talbot had written Finn's name in ink, binding him to this barren land. The wind picked up, rattling the bent gate and tugging at Finn's shirt. Wildflowers bent low between the graves, their yellow heads nodding like mourners. Finn pulled the folded deed from his pocket and scanned the fine print again. The cemetery was larger than the fence suggested. Much larger. It extended in every direction, swallowing up several acres of empty prairie that stretched all the way toward the blue-gray outline of the mountains. But empty prairie wasn't worth the parchment it was written on. Not enough to make Wallace Rigsby linger awkwardly on Finn's porch, his eyes darting like a man who knew more than he dared to say. Not enough to explain the tight smile that had slipped across the lawyer's lips when Finn asked if there was anything unusual about the property. No, there was something more here. Something not written in the legal papers. As Finn tucked the deed back into his pocket, a flicker of movement drew his eyes to the horizon. A rider, distant but closing fast. The figure moved with the kind of authority that made the land itself seem to give way. Even before the details came clear, the broad shoulders, the immaculate posture in the saddle, Finn knew who it was. Thorne Shepherd. The name carried weight across 3 counties. Shepherd owned more land than some rail companies, and he ruled it with the kind of quiet brutality that didn't need to be spoken aloud. Men who crossed him either folded or vanished. His black horse thundered closer, kicking up plumes of dust that clung in the still air. Finn's chest tightened. If Shepherd was here, then whatever Jeremiah had left him wasn't just a graveyard. It was something more, something worth fighting over. Thorn Shepherd reined in his stallion just outside the crooked iron gate. The horse snorted, tossing its head as if it too sensed the wrongness of this place. Dust clung to the man's black coat, but his boots shone, polished to a mirror's gleam. Shepherd carried himself like a man who had never once doubted he was the most powerful figure in sight. His gaze swept the cemetery in silence. His pale eyes lingered on the tilted stones, then on Finn, standing tall with dirt still clinging to his palms. "You're a Talbot," Shepherd said finally, his voice low, carrying the weight of both recognition and disdain. Finn felt the words strike like a brand. He nodded slowly. "Name's Finn. And you are?" A thin smile curved Shepherd's mouth, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You know who I am." The way he said it sent a chill down Finn's spine. He did know. Everyone did. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the creak of the cemetery gate and the restless pawing of Shepherd's horse. "Shepherd," Finn said, squaring his shoulders. "What brings you here?" Only when the echo of hoofbeats faded did Rigsby exhale, a sound sharp and ragged, like a man surfacing from underwater. His knees nearly buckled. He grabbed the cemetery gate for balance, his breath coming fast. Finn watched him, the shovel still clenched in his hand. "You said he'd kill for what's buried here. Why?" Rigsby wiped sweat from his brow, his face pale, his eyes darting everywhere but Finn's. "Because," he whispered, "what Jeremiah buried isn't his to give. It isn't even his to guard. That land you stand on, those graves, they're a mask, Talbot. A mask for something older, deeper. Something Shepherd's been trying to get his hands on for 20 years. The words dropped heavy in the still air. Rigsby leaned in close, lowering his voice to a rasp. "There are tunnels under this place. Jeremiah swore they were older than the town itself. Older than the maps. Some say they were dug by settlers. Others say different." He glanced nervously at the oak, then at the disturbed soil Finn had covered. "Your uncle sealed them, swore they'd never be opened again. But Shepherd, he thinks there's gold. Or worse." Finn felt the tin box heavy against his chest. "Gold doesn't explain bones in shallow graves." Rigsby flinched. His lips parted, but before he could speak, a sound split the air. Not hoofbeats, not wind. A low, hollow thud from beneath the ground. Both men froze. It came again, faint but deliberate, like earth shifting where it shouldn't. A third time, closer, beneath their boots. The crow screamed overhead, startled from its perch on a headstone. Rigsby staggered back, his face twisted in terror. "You shouldn't have dug, Talbot," he rasped. "God help us, you shouldn't have dug." The sound faded, leaving only the whistle of the wind through the prairie grass. But Finn's pulse still pounded, and the ground beneath his feet no longer felt solid. He tightened his grip on the shovel, eyes darting from Rigsby to the oak, to the graves lined in eerie precision. Something was down there, something Shepherd wanted, and now it knew Finn had found it. Perfect. I'll slow burn it a bit, letting Finn leave the cemetery with that unease still gnawing at him, and then use the town as a place to reveal scraps of Jeremiah's shadowy past, while keeping the underground presence in the audience's mind like a heartbeat. Finn didn't move for a long while. He stood rooted to the soil, staring at the place where Shepherd's stallion had disappeared, listening for any hint of that hollow thud returning. But the land was silent again, deceptively still. Rigsby tugged at his sleeve, eyes wild. "Don't stay here," he urged. "Not tonight. Not ever." Finn didn't answer. He wiped the sweat from his brow and finally turned his back on the graves. The prairie stretched wide and endless, but for the first time in his life, Finn felt as though the earth itself was watching him walk away. The town of Alder Creek was little more than a cluster of buildings hugging the main road, but to Finn it felt suddenly alive with whispers. He tied his horse outside the saloon and stepped inside. The room smelled of smoke, cheap whiskey, and bodies pressed too close. Cards slapped against tables. Laughter rose and fell. But as soon as Finn crossed the threshold, a few heads turned his way. Eyes lingered. Not hostile, not yet, but wary, curious. Word had spread. He ordered a coffee instead of whiskey, then carried the tin mug to a table in the corner. From there, he watched and listened. It didn't take long. Two men at a nearby table spoke low, but Finn caught enough. Shepherd won't let that land slip away. He's wanted it since before most of us set foot here. Old Jeremiah, stubborn fool, died before he'd ever sell. And now the nephew has it. Poor bastard. Finn's jaw tightened. He leaned back, sipping the bitter coffee, his ears tuned to every word. A shadow fell over his table. He looked up to find Clara Denshaw standing there. Widow Denshaw, as most called her, though not to her face. She was tall, shoulders squared, with dark hair pinned neatly under a bonnet. She'd run the boarding house for 20 years, long enough to see every sort of trouble pass through Alder Creek. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, studied Finn without flinching. "You're Jeremiah's kin," she said flatly. Finn nodded once. She slid into the chair opposite him without asking. "You went out to the cemetery." Not a question. Finn stayed quiet, letting her fill the silence. "She did." "That place is wrong," Clara said. "Always has been. Jeremiah kept it, but he never tended it like other graveyards. Never buried folk there either, not unless it was one of those 7. Her lips thinned. "And no one in this town speaks of them." Finn leaned forward. "Then why don't you tell me?" Her eyes flicked to the room, scanning faces, then dropped back to him. "Because words have a way of drawing things near. Things you don't want listening." Finn's stomach tightened. The memory of that hollow thud under the soil returned unbidden. Clara rose as quickly as she'd Saturday. "My advice? Sell to Shepherd. Whatever price he offers, take it. The land isn't worth what it will cost you." She left without another word. Finn sat there a long time, coffee gone cold in his hands, the saloon's noise a dull roar in his ears. Every warning pressed on him. Rigsby's panic, Clara's hawk-eyed counsel, Shepherd's veiled threats. They all pointed to the same truth. Jeremiah's inheritance wasn't a gift. It was a burden. Yet when Finn reached inside his coat and felt the tin box against his ribs, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to sell. Not yet. Not without knowing what was buried under that soil. And deep down, beneath the fear, beneath the unease, another thought gnawed at him. Maybe Jeremiah had chosen him for this very reason. The saloon doors swung shut behind Clara, but her warning clung to Finn like smoke. He stayed in his corner until the lamp flames burned low and the noise dulled to murmurs. By then, most of the gamblers were gone, and the air felt thick, tired. He left without speaking to anyone. The streets of Alder Creek were near empty, shadows stretching long across the dirt road. A dog barked somewhere down by the livery, sharp and sudden, then fell silent. Finn's boots carried him toward the boarding house before he realized where he was headed. The windows glowed faintly, one by one, until a single lantern flickered in the front parlor. Clara sat there, ledger in her lap, but when she saw him at the door, she didn't seem surprised. "You should be gone from this town by morning," she said simply. Finn shook his head. "Not until I understand what my uncle was guarding." Her eyes narrowed, but she set the ledger aside. "Guarding? Is that what Rigsby told you?" "Rigsby told me Shepherd wants what's under the graves." A muscle twitched in Clara's jaw. "Then Rigsby said more than he should have." She stood, crossed to a cabinet, and withdrew a folded piece of yellowed parchment. She held it like it burned her fingers. "This," she said, handing it over, "is a copy of an old map. It's been passed through families longer than I can count. Shows tunnels under the cemetery hill. Some say settlers dug them. Others claim they were there before even the first cabins. Jeremiah believed the latter." Finn unfolded it carefully. Faded ink lines, crooked and smudged, traced beneath where the oak tree stood. Circles marked spots that looked like chambers. One had been scratched out with heavy strokes. "What's in them?" Finn asked. Clara's gaze hardened. "That's the question Jeremiah never answered. But I'll tell you this. Every family that's tried to dig there ended with men missing or worse. Graves filled too soon. The lantern guttered, throwing shadows up the wall. For a moment it looked as though the branches of the oak stretched across the plaster. Finn folded the map and slid it into his coat. "I need to see it for myself." "You'll regret that," Clara said, her voice sharp as a whip. "Just like your uncle did." But Finn was already at the door, jaw set, heart pounding with the knowledge that the ground under his feet hid something no one dared speak of. By the time he reached the edge of town, the moon had risen high, pale and cold. He rode hard across the prairie, the grass whispering as though stirred by unseen hands. When the cemetery gate came into view, his horse balked, ears pinned back. Finn dismounted, leading it by the reins until he reached the oak. The earth smelled damp, turned from where he had dug earlier. And then he heard it again, that hollow thud. Not faint this time, stronger, closer. The sound pulsed, steady as a heartbeat, rising from beneath the graves. Finn's hand tightened around the shovel. His chest burned with fear, but also with a grim, rising certainty. Shepherd wasn't chasing ghosts or gold. He was chasing this. And now, whatever it was awake. The steady thud beneath the soil didn't fade. It came in waves, like a muffled drumbeat carried up from the bones of the earth. Finn's breath caught, and he forced himself still, straining to hear. Silence. Then a scrape, a drag, slow and deliberate, like something heavy shifting in the dark. Finn's knuckles whitened around the shovel handle. He wasn't a man who rattled easily, but this wasn't the sound of wind through grass or roots pressing through soil. This was movement, intentional movement. His horse jerked against the reins, eyes rolling white, nostrils flaring. It let out a shrill whinny and tore free, bolting into the night. Finn didn't chase it. His attention stayed fixed on the disturbed patch of earth beneath the oak. The moonlight spilled silver across the cemetery, catching on the edges of the headstones, making the names shimmer faintly. 7 graves, all in a line, all tied somehow to whatever was still shifting below. He knelt, pressing his palm flat to the soil. The ground was cold, too cold, as if it drew heat from his skin. He jerked back instinctively, wiping his hand on his trousers. The air shifted. A low wind stirred the branches above, making them groan against one another. For an instant it sounded like voices whispering. Finn swallowed hard. His uncle hadn't left him land. He had left him a prison. And maybe that prison was weakening. He forced himself to move, digging his shovel into the softest patch of dirt. The blade struck deep with little resistance, turning up clumps of dark, damp soil. The smell hit him first, rot and iron, sharp enough to sting his nostrils. He kept digging, each stroke harder, faster, as if his own nerves were urging him on. The map in his pocket burned against his chest like a reminder of what lay beneath. Then, with a hollow clang, the shovel hit something that wasn't rock. Wood. Finn froze, sweat running cold down his spine. He cleared the dirt carefully, revealing the corner of a rough-hewn plank. It wasn't a coffin. The grain was too wide, the shape too crude. This was a hatch. His stomach nodded. Jeremiah had hidden this, buried it deep under the oak. The thud came again, louder now, vibrating through the wood. Finn staggered back, pulse hammering. And then another sound, not from below, from behind. The faint creak of the cemetery gate swinging open. The creak of the cemetery gate cut through the night like a knife. Finn spun, shovel still gripped in his hands, his heartbeat pounding loud in his ears. The shadows at the edge of the fence shifted. A lantern flared, its glow bobbing as someone stepped through. "Mr. Talbot," a voice drawled, smooth and steady. "Thorn Shepherd." The lantern light caught his features. Polished, calm, but those sharp eyes glittered with something closer to hunger than curiosity. His black horse waited just beyond the gate, stamping the dirt as if it, too, wanted no part of this place. "You're up late," Shepherd said, strolling forward, every step unhurried, as though he owned the ground beneath his boots. Finn said nothing. He angled his body to block the half-exposed hatch, though he knew Shepherd's eyes missed little. "Funny thing," Shepherd continued. "Men who inherit land they don't understand tend to make mistakes with it. Costly mistakes." He lifted the lantern higher, its light spilling across the oak tree, across the churned dirt at Finn's feet. His lips curled, not into a smile but something colder. "Seems you've been busy." Finn forced his voice steady. "Just curious about what my uncle left me." Shepherd's gaze lingered on the loose soil, then dropped to the faint outline of wood peeking through. For the first time that night, the land baron's composure cracked. His nostrils flared, and something like fear, or was it recognition, flashed across his face. "You don't want that open," he said sharply, the smooth tone gone. Finn's grip tightened on the shovel. "You seem awful certain about what's down there." Shepherd stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Your uncle understood. That hatch isn't a door, Talbot. It's a lock. Whatever's beneath doesn't belong in daylight. That's why the graves are lined the way they are. A warning. A seal." The night air seemed to thicken. The oak branches rattled above, though no wind stirred the grass. From below the hatch came a scraping sound. Louder this time, metal against stone. Both men heard it. Both froze. Shepherd hissed a breath, jaw tight. "Leave it buried. Sell me the land, walk away, and you might still keep your skin." Finn's blood burned with defiance. He'd been poor his whole life, but never a coward. And Shepherd's sudden fear only hardened his resolve. "What's under here, Shepherd?" The older man's eyes flicked toward the hatch, then back to Finn. "Something your uncle kept locked away for 30 years. Something that wakes when fools disturb it." As if to punctuate his words, the thud came again, so hard the soil trembled under Finn's boots. The lantern flame wavered violently, almost snuffed out. And in that moment, Finn understood two things. Thorn Shepherd wasn't here to buy land. He was here to keep a secret buried. And Finn had already dug too far to stop. The silence after the last thud was heavy enough to choke on. Shepherd's lantern flickered, throwing jagged shadows across the crooked headstones, making the graves look deeper than they were. He stepped closer, close enough that Finn could smell the sharp tang of cologne beneath the stink of damp earth. "You don't understand what you're meddling with," Shepherd said. His voice carried an edge now, stripped of its polished veneer. "Your uncle was a stubborn man, but even he knew some doors are meant to stay shut." Finn didn't move. His muscles coiled tight, shovel angled like a weapon. "Funny. You seem mighty invested for someone who claims the land's worthless." Shepherd's jaw worked, a muscle twitching as his eyes darted again to the exposed wood. "I'll make you one final offer. 10 times what this ground is worth. Cash in hand. Tonight. You take it, ride out before dawn, and never come back." The number rattled around Finn's head. 10 times. Enough to buy new farmland, new equipment, maybe even a better life than scraping out survival season after season. But his gut twisted, because Shepherd wasn't buying dirt. He was buying silence. Finn spat into the soil. "Not for sale." The air snapped tight, charged like the still moment before lightning splits the sky. Shepherd's hand drifted toward his coat pocket. Slowly, purposefully, Finn shifted his weight, shovel ready. His pulse thundered in his ears. But before either man could act, the ground beneath the hatch groaned. Not just a sound, an actual shift like the earth itself exhaled. Loose soil tumbled away, and the corner of the hatch lifted a fraction of an inch, grinding against stone. Both men froze. From the gap seeped a foul breath of air, damp, metallic and old, so old it seemed to claw straight down Finn's throat. He gagged, stepping back instinctively. Shepard's face blanched, his confidence splintering. "Damn fool," Shepard whispered, backing away. "You've stirred it." The lantern flame sputtered, then flared high, as if reacting to the breath of the underworld. Shadows lunged up the oak's trunk, twisting like skeletal fingers. Finn stared at the hatch. The wood trembled, rattling as if something beneath was pressing, testing the weakness of its prison. His heart pounded so hard it hurt, but he couldn't look away. Shepard's voice came low, urgent, almost pleading now. "Step away, Talbot. If you value your soul, step away." But Finn planted his boots in the dirt. His uncle hadn't left this land to him to run. He'd left it because someone had to stand guard when the ground began to stir again. And that time was now. The hatch shuddered. Cracks spidered through the wood. And from below came a sound no man should ever hear. Half scream, half laugh, carried on a voice that hadn't drawn breath in decades. The sound from below twisted through the night like a knife in the gut. Ragged, mocking, alive. Finn staggered back a step, shovel still clutched in his fists, sweat rolling cold down his neck. Shepard cursed under his breath, a sound too sharp, too fearful for a man used to control. His hand snapped into his coat and came out with a revolver, gleaming in the lantern light. "Move away from it, Talbot!" he barked, voice cracking like a whip. "Now!" Finn's chest heaved. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, to leave this cursed place to rot back into the earth. But another voice, quieter, steadier, spoke in the back of his skull. Jeremiah's voice. Not words, not memory, just a weight. The weight of duty. Finn shook his head slowly. "You shoot me, Shepard, and this hatch still opens. Won't matter one bit." The barrel wavered just for a second. Shepard's face glistened with sweat, eyes wild. "You don't understand. You let it out, and this whole county burns. Worse, I've kept it quiet. Jeremiah kept it quiet. But if that seal breaks, there's no burying it again." The wood groaned, splintering, a sharp crack splitting the night. Both men flinched. The sound from below rose higher, like dozens of voices pressed into one throat, clawing to be heard. Shepard's gun hand trembled. For all his power, all his land, he looked small in that moment. A man who had built his kingdom on fear of what slept under this tree. Finn's jaw tightened. "Then why not warn me? Why not tell the truth from the start?" Shepard's teeth bared. "Because men like you never believe until it's too late." And then the hatch bucked. Not gently, violently. Soil sprayed upward, clods hitting Finn's chest, Shepard's boots, the lantern glass. The ground shivered like a beast shaking off chains. The revolver thundered. Shepard fired not at Finn but at the hatch. The bullet slammed into the wood with a deafening crack, splinters flying. For a moment, silence. Then laughter. Deep, rattling, inhuman laughter. It rolled up from the depths, shaking the marrow of Finn's bones. Shepard's face drained of color. He fired again and again, each shot punching useless holes into the wood. The laughter only swelled, mingling with a wet, dragging scrape from below. The lantern sputtered wildly, shadows tearing across the crooked stones. Finn raised his shovel, knowing it was nothing more than a stick of iron and wood against whatever pressed beneath. The hatch lifted, inch by inch. Fingers, if they could be called that, pushed through a crack in the planks. Pale, mottled, too long, with nails like black glass. They curled against the night air, grasping. Shepard stumbled back, revolver clicking empty. His voice broke. "God help us. It's coming out." Finn planted his boots, eyes fixed on the horror breaching the surface. His hands shook, but his grip didn't loosen. Because whether he liked it or not, this fight had been left to him. The fingers twitched against the night air, flexing as though remembering what it meant to move, to grasp, to hunt. They scraped across the wood, leaving grooves deep enough to curl splinters. Finn's chest heaved. His shovel felt pitiful in his hands, but he lifted it anyway, planting himself between the hatch and Shepard. His boots sank in the soft earth, the cemetery soil trembling like a heartbeat under his feet. Shepherd staggered back until his shoulders struck a headstone. His revolver hung useless, chambers empty, the smell of spent powder clinging in the night air. His lips moved in a whisper, a prayer or a curse, but no sound came out. The hatch shuddered again, lifting higher, enough now that a foul stench spilled forth. It reeked of rot and wet stone, sharp as iron. So strong Finn gagged and turned his face aside. His stomach lurched, but his eyes snapped back. Because through the widening crack he saw them. Eyes, not human eyes, too wide, too far apart. They glowed faintly, like coals buried deep in ash, red at the edges, black at the core. They blinked once, a slow, deliberate motion that seemed less like a reflex and more like a signal. Shepherd made a strangled sound, half sob, half gasp. You fool. You've woken it. The ground cut him off. Soil split along a jagged line stretching from the hatch toward the graves. The nearest headstone tipped sideways, tumbling with a dull thunk. Finn's heart slammed against his ribs. He could feel the weight of his uncle's choice now. Not inheritance, not obligation, but a burden no sane man would ever want. The fingers clawed deeper into the wood, prying it upward with slow, steady force. The nails screeched against the planks, sparks faint in the lantern glow. Then came the voice. It wasn't a single sound, but many, layered atop one another. Male, female, child, elder. Shifting so quickly it was impossible to pin down. It slithered into Finn's ears, into his skull, coiling around his thoughts. Fian? It hissed, stretching his name until it seemed to last forever. Finn's grip faltered. His uncle's name had never been spoken in his presence. Yet somehow this thing knew his. Shepherd snapped out of his daze, lunging forward. His hand clamped onto Finn's arm, nails digging in. We have to seal it now, he barked, his voice a ragged growl of desperation. Before it breaks through completely. But Finn's eyes were locked on the hatch, on the thing forcing its way into the world. He felt the pull, the lure of knowledge, of power, of answers buried with the dead. And he didn't know yet whether he would slam the door shut or let it rise. Shepherd's grip dug into Finn's arm hard enough to bruise. His face was pale, eyes wild, teeth clenched so tight the tendons in his neck stood out. We have to bury it again, he hissed. Now, before it claws its way free. Finn yanked his arm loose, shovel swinging between them like a barrier. You knew. All this time you knew what was under here, and you still came sniffing after it like a dog after a bone. Shepherd's eyes flashed. I came to keep it contained. Jeremiah did his part, but now he's gone, and it falls to someone else. You think this is inheritance, boy? This is a sentence. The hatch creaked louder, planks bowing under the pressure from below. The glowing eyes blinked again, and the voice rose in pitch, weaving through the night like smoke. Fian, loosen the chains. Finn's stomach nodded. His name again, dragged out, heavy, dripping with promises he didn't dare believe. His hands trembled, not with fear but with the awful pull of temptation. Shepherd saw it. His jaw set, and he lunged, shoving Finn backward. The shovel clattered against stone as Shepherd threw himself onto the hatch, boots braced, trying to force it back down. His palms slammed against the planks, but the thing beneath pressed harder, rattling the wood under his weight. Help me, Shepherd barked, his voice cracking. Put your damn weight on it, Talbot, or it's over for both of us. Finn scrambled up, shovel in hand, torn between choices that split his chest in two. The farmer in him, the man who'd buried crops, animals, and loved ones alike. New soil was meant to cover the dead, not free them. But another voice, a darker one, whispered in his bones. What if Jeremiah left you this not to guard, but to claim? What if it's power, not prison? The planks shrieked, a splinter cracking free. One of those pale fingers shot upward, curling around Shepherd's wrist. The land baron screamed, thrashing, trying to rip free. Blood streaked his skin where the nails dug deep. Finn, he howled. For God's sake, strike it down. Finn raised the shovel, every muscle screaming. But his eyes, his traitorous eyes, locked on the thing below. On the way it watched him. On the way it knew him. The night hung frozen. Every breath, every shadow, every heartbeat caught on the knife's edge of his decision. Finn's arms trembled as he gripped the shovel, its metal edge gleaming under the moonlight. Shepard writhed on the hatch, blood dripping from his wrist where those pale fingers clung like roots pulling him into the grave. Now, Finn! Shepard screamed, his voice breaking. End it! Strike it down before it drags us both. But the voice beneath rose, louder, clearer, twisting through Finn's skull like a blade wrapped in silk. Not him. You. You're the one it chose. Don't bury your legacy. Finn. Claim it. Finn's chest heaved. Sweat slicked his brow. His knuckles whitened as he raised the shovel higher. Shepard's face twisted upward, raw terror carving deep lines into his flesh. Don't listen to it. Shepard roared. It lies. It's always lied. That's how it breaks men. Jeremiah fought it every day of his life. You think you're stronger than he was. The hatch shuddered violently, wood cracking down the middle. The voice below dropped into a guttural, hungry whisper that seemed to crawl straight into Finn's marrow. Free me, and you'll never want again. Finn froze, breath ragged, caught between Shepard's desperate cries and the seductive pull of the dark promise. His shovel hovered in the air, suspended, his choice still unmade. And then, the hatch exploded upward. Splinters shot into the night as if the earth itself had been blown apart. Shepard was thrown back, screaming, his body skidding across the dirt. Finn staggered, blinded by dust and moonlight, as something massive and rotting clawed its way into the world. It was taller than a man, hunched, its frame draped in ragged flesh that clung like wet parchment. Eyes burned pale and endless, and when it grinned, its mouth stretched wider than bone should allow. The night filled with the sound of chains snapping like brittle twigs. And then, silence. The creature turned its head, slow and deliberate, until those glowing eyes fixed on Finn. Mine. The ground seemed to breathe beneath Finn's boots. Dust swirled in the air, and for a heartbeat, the world went still, like even the crickets and coyotes had fled. Then it moved. The creature lunged forward, faster than its twisted frame should have allowed. Its arm-long, skeletal, fingers tipped with black claws, snapped out and caught Shepard by the chest. The land baron scream tore through the night as he was lifted from the earth like a rag doll, his legs kicking wildly. The monster's grin widened. The claws dug deeper. Ribs cracked like dry twigs. Finn staggered back, shovel still clutched tight. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to flee into the dark, to put miles of dirt and fence between himself and this nightmare. But those glowing eyes didn't leave him, not even as Shepard shrieked and bled in its grip. The thing whispered again, though its mouth didn't move. The words just appeared in his skull. You are chosen. Not him. Never him. Take my hand, and I'll show you what Jeremiah feared. Finn's heart hammered against his ribs. He saw Shepard's face. Red, straining, veins bursting in his temples as the life was crushed from him. Shepard gasped, voice ragged. Do it, Finn. Kill it. Kill it before it kills us both. Finn's grip tightened on the shovel. His mind split in two, half filled with rage and fear, the other half drawn to the terrible promise of power, of never being weak, never being forgotten, never being just another farmer sinking into the dirt. The creature's head tilted, unnatural and jerky, as if listening to his thoughts. Its claws flexed, spraying Shepard's blood across the dirt. Strike him down, it whispered. Prove you are not your father's son. The choice burned in Finn's veins, heavy as the shovel in his hands. And then, Shepard's scream cut off. The creature squeezed once, hard, and threw the man's body into the dust like it was nothing. He hit the earth with a thud that rattled Finn's bones. The monster straightened, chains dangling from its limbs, shadows wrapping around it like a cloak. Its grin never faded. It took one slow step toward Finn. Now what will you be? The shovel felt heavier now, as if the wood itself absorbed the dread seeping from the thing before him. His knuckles whitened as he gripped it, sweat slick on his palms. Every muscle screamed to swing, to drive steel into rotten flesh, to fight back before it was too late. but his legs wouldn't move. His chest heaved, shallow, panic breaths rattling his throat. The creature took another step. The earth seemed to sink under its weightless frame, soil sagging, stones rattling as if it carried the weight of centuries. Jeremiah thought he could bury me, the whisper in Finn's skull said, softer now, almost soothing. But the blood in your veins is mine as well. Why else would he choose you? Why else leave you this place? Finn's breath caught. His uncle had known? The monster leaned closer, and the smell of wet clay and grave dirt filled Finn's nostrils. Its grin widened until its cheeks cracked and tore, strings of black ichor dripping down its chin. Behind him, Shepard's body twitched once, nerves firing their last sparks. His face was pale, slack, empty. Finn's eyes burned, torn between rage and terror. He thought of his farm, the dry soil that refused to yield. He thought of nights going hungry, of debts, of neighbors whispering about his failures. Then he thought of Jeremiah, an uncle who had never spoken to him, yet had left him a cursed cemetery. The shovel trembled in his hands. One voice in his mind screamed, "Swing! End this, before it devours you." Another voice, deeper, colder, whispered, "Take its hand. Take its gift. Be more than a farmer destined for dust." The creature's claw stretched out toward him, talons glistening in the faint moonlight. Not an attack, an invitation. And still, Finn could not move. The silence between them grew unbearable, thick as tar. Even the night seemed to wait. The night pressed closer, heavy as a blanket soaked in cold rain. Even the crickets had stopped, as though the world itself didn't dare breathe. The shovel's edge gleamed faintly in the moonlight, catching silver where rust hadn't dulled it. Finn's eyes fixed on that edge, on what it could do if he only had the courage to swing. He imagined the steel biting into the thing's neck, imagined the sound it would make, the release, the finality. But then he looked at its hand, long, skeletal, veins like black roots coiling beneath thin skin. Not striking, not reaching to tear, simply held out, like a promise. The voice returned, velvet and poisonous. "Jeremiah chose you, boy. He didn't bury you in chores and leave you to rot on barren soil for nothing. He gave you this place, a place older than the town, older than the graves. The soil remembers, Finn, and it can remember you." The words slithered into him, wrapping around his ribs. He tried to shake them, but each syllable dug deeper. His chest heaved harder, throat raw from shallow breaths. His mind raced. If I swing and miss? If I swing and it doesn't fall? If I take its hand, what do I become? A bead of sweat slid down his temple, stinging his eye. He blinked, the world swimming in shadows and pale light. The creature tilted its head, bird-like, studying him. Then, with a sound like cracking branches, it bent lower, its face now inches from his. The grin split wider, teeth jagged as broken glass. "Poor Finn," it hissed inside his skull. "You've toiled in dust your whole life. No legacy, no children, nothing but empty fields and empty nights. Take my hand, and you will never know hunger again." The silence after those words was absolute. Finn felt his heart hammering so hard it might burst free of his chest. His fingers flexed around the shovel handle. His boots dug deeper into the soft, shifting ground. One thought, sharp and clear, sliced through the haze. This moment decides everything. Finn's breath fogged in the cool night air, each exhale shallow and trembling. His arms ached from holding the shovel poised, muscles locked in a tension he couldn't release. His body screamed for action, but his mind was drowning in that voice. The creature's hand hung there, steady, not wavering, not rushing him, almost patient. "Do you feel it?" The whisper seeped into him, curling under his skin. "The pull of the earth? The way it bends for you?" Jeremiah tried to resist, and look what it cost him. Don't make his mistake. Finn's jaw clenched so tight his teeth hurt. His pulse throbbed in his temples, pounding louder than the stillness around him. He thought of Jeremiah's will, of Rigsby's suspicious questions, of Shepard's lies about wanting to buy the land. They all knew something. They all wanted something from this place. The realization chilled him deeper than the night wind. Maybe Jeremiah hadn't left him the land as a gift. Maybe it was a burden, a chain, A test. His grip shifted on the shovel. He could feel the rough splinters pressing into his palms, grounding him in something real, something human. The creature leaned closer, its empty eyes reflecting slivers of moonlight. Its voice throbbed like a heartbeat in Finn's skull. Choose, boy. Soil or steel. The world narrowed to two things: shovel blade, outstretched hand. A droplet of sweat slid from Finn's chin and struck the dirt with a tiny pat. Even the sound felt like a signal. Every nerve in his body screamed for resolution. And still, he did not move. The moment stretched unbearable, as if the whole night was holding its breath, waiting to see which way Finn would break. The silence was alive now. It pressed against Finn's ears, so heavy it rang like iron struck on iron. His breath sounded too loud, too clumsy, like an intruder in this place that was not meant for the living. The creature did not blink. Its grin did not falter. Its hand, still hanging there, seemed to tremble with restrained hunger, though its clawed fingers stayed perfectly still. Finn's shovel wavered, just slightly. His arms burned, shoulders trembling. Sweat trickled down his spine beneath his shirt, making the fabric cling like damp rags. He couldn't hold this standoff forever. End it now. Swing. The thought struck him like lightning. His grip tightened, and he almost moved. Almost. But his eyes caught the hand again. And something about it changed. The longer he looked, the less monstrous it seemed. Not claws now, but fingers long, yes, but pale like bone carved clean. The skin stretched thin, but not entirely grotesque. It looked almost human. This is how it tempts you, he thought. This is how it wins. But another thought, sly and dangerous, slithered in. Or maybe this is how you escape the life you've been chained to. The shovel's blade sank an inch deeper into the soft soil from his shaking. The creature tilted its head, watching. Its grin stretched further, and a low vibration rattled through the ground. A hum that wasn't sound so much as feeling. It pulsed in Finn's bones, sinking with his heartbeat until he couldn't tell which was his and which belonged to the thing. Choose, it whispered again. Or I will choose for you. The words struck like a blow. Finn's throat went dry. His heart hammered harder. The world teetered on a knife's edge. The night had grown colder, though Finn hadn't noticed when. His skin prickled with gooseflesh, his breath a pale ghost in the air. He shifted his weight, boots sinking into the soft earth, the ground almost greedy beneath him, as though it wanted him to fall to his knees. The creature didn't move. Its stillness was worse than any lunge, worse than any strike. That hand, steady, patient, hovered inches from his reach, like it had all the time in the world, like it already knew how this would end. Finn's chest rose and fell too fast. He tried to steady it, but the rhythm wouldn't come. His fingers cramped around the shovel handle. He told himself he was a farmer, that he'd split roots thicker than this thing's arm, that he knew the weight of labor, the swing of steel. But this wasn't a root. This wasn't a crop. This was something that thought, something that wanted. Steel or soil? Steel or soil? The words echoed in his mind, not his own, not entirely the creature's. A chant, a rhythm, and then he heard another sound, a faint creak. His head snapped sideways, sweat stinging his eye. The rusted gate at the cemetery's edge swayed in the windless night, slowly, back and forth. The old iron hinges moaned like a voice in pain. He looked back. The creature hadn't flinched, but its grin widened, showing teeth black with rot, wet with shadow. Even the gate knows, it whispered in him. Even the earth calls for your answer. Finn's heart skipped, then slammed hard. His body screamed to act, to do something, and yet he held, shovel frozen, muscles locked, breath trembling. The moment grew unbearable, stretched thin as glass. And still, it did not break. The gate creaked again. Longer this time, the sound scraping through the silence like a rusted saw across bone. Finn's throat tightened. He swallowed, but it was loud, too loud, echoing in his own ears. The shovel's wooden shaft slicked with sweat, threatening to slip from his grip. He clenched harder, knuckles whitening, tendons straining beneath the skin. The creature leaned closer, just enough for Finn to feel the air shift. Not warm, not cold, wrong. like the draft from a cellar door long sealed. The smell came with it. Damp stone, iron, and something sweet that turned sour halfway through the breath. Finn's stomach twisted. He wanted to gag, but his body wouldn't obey. The voice returned, steady as a priest's sermon. You've been waiting your whole life for this choice, boy. Your uncle failed it. Your neighbors would fail it. Shepherd, the grin split wider. He thought money would shield him, and now look at him. Finn's eyes darted to the body sprawled a few yards away. Shepherd's pale face seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight, his open eyes glassy, staring at nothing. The horse was gone, bolted into the hills at the first scent of rot. But Shepherd was never leaving this ground. Finn's breath hitched. His arms trembled. Swing. End it. The thought came again, sharp, desperate. Take its hand. Claim it. The counterthought followed, smooth as silk. He could feel himself splitting like two men sharing the same skin. One gripping the shovel, the other reaching out. The hum beneath the ground deepened, a pulse in the soil itself. The headstones shivered, ever so slightly. Dust trickled down their carved faces. The earth wanted something. Finn wanted to scream, but no sound came. Still he held, caught between steel and soil. And the night dragged on. The hum beneath the ground grew louder. Not with sound, but with pressure, like the soil itself had lungs and was drawing in breath. The earth swelled under Finn's boots, ever so slightly, rising and falling in time with his own heartbeat. He froze. His eyes darted downward. The ground wasn't just soft anymore. It was moving. The graves. Each of the 7 headstones rattled faintly, a shiver in the moonlight. Dust fell from their worn carvings, and the grass around them trembled as though something pressed upward from below. Finn's chest locked. His grip on the shovel tightened until his wrists ached. No, he rasped, but the sound barely made it past his lips. The creature leaned closer, its voice silk over steel. You feel it now, you know. They don't rest here. They never did. This place is not for death. It is for return. The words scraped down his spine. His gaze flicked again toward Shepherd's body, lying twisted near the gate. The lawyer's warning echoed in his head. Shepherd's lies, Jeremiah's silence. They all pointed to this moment, to this cursed earth. The shovel's blade quivered in his shaking hands. A groan split the night, long low, like timbers straining under the weight of years. The oak tree in the corner shifted, its bark creaking as branches twisted against the sky. Its roots bulged from the ground, curling like the backs of great black snakes. Finn stumbled one step back, but the earth seemed to drag at his heels, sucking him down, refusing to let him flee. The creature's grin widened until its jaw cracked, splitting further than a man's ever should. The sound was wet, sharp. Steel or soil, it crooned. You cannot stand forever. Finn's pulse pounded so hard his vision blurred. The world swam, tilting, bending. The shovel wavered. His knees weakened, and still he didn't move. The silence swelled again, thicker, louder, crushing. The moment stretched to breaking. The ground swelled again, not just under Finn's boots this time, but across the whole cemetery. A ripple passed through the soil, subtle at first, then stronger, rolling like the swell of a tide beneath the earth. Finn staggered, knees bending to keep balance. His shovel sank half an inch deeper into the soft ground with a wet thunk. The nearest headstone, its face worn smooth by years of wind, shifted. Just slightly. The base ground against the soil with a gritty moan. Another followed, a few yards away. Then another, until all 7 leaned and shivered, as though invisible hands pushed from below. Finn's breath tore from him in short, panicked bursts. His chest ached with the effort of holding still, of not collapsing under the dread pressing down on him. The oak groaned louder. Its branches swayed in a wind that wasn't there, clawing the sky, casting long skeletal shadows over the graves. The roots bulged higher, splitting soil, spilling clods of dirt like freshly dug graves. The creature did not move. His hand still hung in the air, steady, waiting. Its grin stretched further, black ichor dripping thick as oil onto the dirt. Each drop hissed where it struck, leaving small, smoking pits in the ground. Jeremiah knew. The voice whispered in Finn's skull, lower now, deeper, each word like a shovel full of dirt striking wood. He tried to chain this place, to bury it in silence. But the land never forgets. It only waits. Finn's throat closed. He wanted to shout, to curse Jeremiah, to curse Shepherd, to curse this whole cursed ground. But his voice was gone, swallowed by the suffocating air. The graves rattled harder. Faint cracks split the soil around them, thin lines glowing faintly with a pale, cold light, like moonlight forced through the earth itself. Finn's stomach turned. His legs trembled. The shovel shook in his grip like a live thing. The voice came again, softer, almost tender now. They're waking. Choose, boy, while the choice is still yours. Finn's vision swam. His chest burned. His knees bent not from decision but from the crushing weight of it all. And still he hadn't swung, hadn't reached. He hovered on the edge, frozen. The moment stretched thin as glass, seconds away from shattering. The cracks around the graves widened with a faint, steady hiss, like steam leaking from pipes deep underground. Pale light seeped through them in threads, weaving across the soil like veins of silver. The glow pulsed, slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat. Finn's chest heaved faster, fighting to keep rhythm with something far older, far stronger. His lungs burned, his ribs ached. His body was no longer moving to his own will, it was answering theirs. A pebble rolled from one headstone and struck the earth. The sound was small, but in the silence, it was deafening. Finn flinched. The creature's grin widened, dripping black strings of rot onto the glowing cracks. Each drop sizzled, sparks snapping where they touched the light. Yet the glow held, stronger, brighter. They've been waiting, the voice whispered inside him, wrapping around his thoughts like roots around stone. Jeremiah delayed, Shepherd denied. But you, its hand twitched, just once closer. You can decide. Finn's shovel wavered. The wooden shaft dug into the calluses of his palms. His shoulders burned, every muscle trembling from holding it raised. Swing now, before it's too late. The thought blazed through him like fire. His grip tightened, knuckles cracking. But then another whisper rose, softer, coaxing, almost gentle. Or reach, and end the struggle forever. His breath came faster, louder, rasping in his throat. His knees bent lower. The shovel blade scraped faintly against stone, teeth jarring. The ground rippled again, stronger. Soil shifted under his boots. It wanted to swallow him. The oak's branches rattled with a sound like bones, shadow fingers clawing across his face. The headstones trembled harder. Dust cascaded down their fronts. Small stones skipped across the ground as if shaken by distant thunder. And still none broke open. Not yet. The silence stretched longer, thinner. So fragile that Finn swore even the beat of his heart might be the thing that shattered it. The glow from the cracks pulsed brighter now, pushing against the dark like veins of lightning trapped beneath glass. Each surge lit Finn's face in ghostly flashes, hollowing his cheeks, casting deep shadows under his eyes. He looked less like a man and more like one of the dead, caught halfway between two worlds. The graves groaned. Long, aching sounds, wood on wood, stone on stone, like coffins straining against the weight of years. Finn's knees buckled. He caught himself, shovel digging into the dirt with a jarring clank. The sound echoed, sharp, unnatural, bouncing between the headstones until it was swallowed by silence again. The creature leaned closer. Its breath rolled over him. Not warm, not cold, but damp, like the inside of a tomb. The smell was unbearable. Wet soil, rusted iron, and something sweet and rotten beneath it all. Almost, it hissed inside him. Its grin quivered at the edges, twitching wider. Do you feel them pressing? Do you hear their hunger? Finn's teeth ground together, jaw aching. His chest rose and fell too fast, ribs straining like bellows at the forge. He wanted to swing, God, he wanted to swing, to end this, to silence it all. But his eyes kept darting to that outstretched hand. Pale, patient, waiting. The ground rippled again, stronger. The soil at his boots broke apart, small clods crumbling as if stirred from beneath. One headstone tilted, leaning so far now that it looked ready to fall. The light at its base grew brighter, spilling between the roots of the oak, running like veins of fire through the earth. Finn's breath stuttered. His vision swam. He swayed on his feet. The creature's voice lowered to a growl, vibrating through his bones. Choose, Finn Talbot, or the earth will choose for you. The night held. The graves shook. And still, not one split open. The moment stretched unbearable.